let me introduce you to Hilmar Veigar Petursson.
Okay, thank you. Just to maybe understand the audience a little bit, how many here are aware of what's going on in EVE Online right now? Okay. How many are involved in it? Okay, here's one. Okay, so I have some material at the end of the talk where I'm going to comment a little bit about that. I will have to get through the whole thing to sort of set the stage so I can really explain to the rest of you why it is occurring and why all this emotion has been unleashed. I'm sort of hoping that it will take too long to get through all of it, so I won't get to the crunchy bit in the end. So you might have to rush me through it. So I am Hilmar Veigar Petursson. I've been with CCP now for 11 years. Originally as CTO for 5 years, and then I was sort of asked one time when we were bankrupt for the second time to become CEO, and I said, okay, I'll do it. And I've been there since. The picture is taken when I was CTO. I'm in much better form there. Being a CEO of a multiplayer company it's rough. So I'm from Iceland, and a lot of what you will see in EVE is actually explained by the fact that we are from Iceland. And that's why the title of the talk is Born This Way. Often we're associated with a lot of innovation in the space, when for the most part we just did this because we didn't know any better. And that's because Iceland is mostly famous for its landscapes and all that, for its volcanoes. Well, apparently I can now start at a Wim Hof hand. It's not that complicated. We put soap in it. That starts up the volcano. No, it's obviously the economy. The Icelandic economy is a wonderful thing and very dynamic. And I would say living in a tiny country, which has 300,000 inhabitants, it's basically smaller than our game. And we probably have some world record in that, having more people play or subscribe to a game than the nation. But you have this sort of macro view on what builds up an economy and a society. So a lot of what we have created in EVE is basically replication of what we have seen in the wonderful thing that is the experimental economy called Iceland. You see here the cycle that Iceland has gone on, from privatization to banks to collecting money here in the UK and not giving it back and all those things. This has been fascinating to watch, and it really, you get this sense of an accelerated timescale, and basically we have taken a lot of inspiration from that over to EVE Online. It's mainly this guy. This is the founder of CCP, Reynir Harðarson, our creative director. He said basically that going on to such a massive project is either done by idiots or madmen, and we were probably both. And just to sort of set the stage on how crazy it was, when he approaches me in 2000 and asked me to join his game company, which then had one programmer, and I was number 2, and he needed one more client server and one to make them talk to each other. That at that point in time, no one in Iceland had ever made a computer game, and no Icelandic person, with the exception of 3 people whose email we didn't have, had ever worked at a game company. So we knew absolutely no one and nothing about it. We had been fortunate enough that there was a company in Iceland called Oz, which was making VRML technology as early as '95. And Reynir and I actually worked there, so we were basically doing a predecessor of Second Life of sorts. And at this time, then Iceland is connecting to the internet with a modem. So sometimes when you went online, you had to wait while the country dialed in. So just imagine like sitting and making virtual reality, the utter craziness of that. So going to play here a video, which is basically the sort of vision for EVE Online as it was presented to me, obviously not with a video like this, but this is gist of it. If we could dim the lights.
Honor isn't about making the right choices. It's about dealing with the consequences. There's a fine line between right and wrong. You'd better know which side of it you're on.
This is Veigar 6. We've reached the last checkpoint before the terminus.
Can you take the ground station?
Not without the close air you promised.
You'll have it. Now keep going and do what I'm paying you for.
You just send that airstrike and the money. We'll take care of the rest. 6! Breaking cover! Move up! Use your jacks! Get out of there! Where's that goddamn airstrike? We had an agreement. We did
Airstrike aborted.
There's been a change of plans, Vanguard.
Orbital strike launched.
Help isn't coming. At all.
The moment you lose your honor, that's when you learn the hard way. Your choice always comes back around.
Okay, this is sort of a concept video for the future vision of EVE as it was presented to me when I joined in the year 2000 in the form of a document as thick as a phone book. And what I then did was to recruit programmers, and sort of 6 months into it, I had made a pretty good version of the game by my accounts, which was this. This is the version of EVE Online as it was in the year 2000. I show this to Reynir, quite proud. See, there are spaceships flying around and they can shoot each other and you can even chat. There's actually, if you read the chat, there's the discovery of the first exploit. And Reynir comes to me and says, oh, Hilmar, it was supposed to be 3D. So it's obviously come a long way since this first version, and it's again to the point of iterative development. Even though we're nowhere close to the casual space or the mobile space, we've been quite proud of the fact that we've been able to keep up a pace of releasing a new version of EVE every 6 months, where we sort of take in all the feedback from the community and the vision of our designers. And we've basically taken this and iterated it to pretty close to what you're seeing in the video, where you have dust on the ground, you have Incarna, which came out last week, inside space stations, and then you have the EVE experience, and it all sort of ties together. And I'm pretty sure that we'll be able to realize that vision sort of in the next 3 years when dust is out and has built up and Incarna has matured. But it wasn't that easy. This is sort of the timeline of CCP. So the company is founded in '97 in Iceland by Reynir. And he actually goes out of the other company we were working at, the Oz company, where we were making VRML second level-like stuff. And the first thing they do is to create a family board game in Iceland called the Danger Game, which is about a teenager that is going to try to not go to hell through narcotic abuse. It was sponsored by the AA Association of Iceland, and is usually played by teenagers in the reverse, where they race to death. But that game is also built about people playing each other and not the game. So it's both a proven concept of the company releasing a product, and again, a good example of delivering stuff is often more important than realizing your vision in the first go. And also proving the theory that the game should be about the people playing and not about the game itself. The profit of the game, it was quite popular in Iceland. It sold to 10,000 copies, and there are only 80,000 households in Iceland. So 1 in every 8 house has this copy, and it's broken up a lot of families because it's played like that. People against each other. There are many stories of people going to summer vacation to a location somewhere and coming all battered back after them playing this game, not unlike EVE Online. The profits are done to make a prototype of EVE Online, and then we raise money privately in Iceland on the 4th of April, which is about a week after the bubble bursts. I think the official date is 28th of March, when Netscape starts to rapidly decline. But the news didn't reach Iceland quite quickly, so we had a very successful private offering in the in the week after the bubble is formally burst, 4 times oversubscribed, and we raised the total amount of $1.3 million, which had been calculated was enough to make EVE Online. And if you can just imagine making a AAA MMO project for the budget of $1.3 million, then that cannot be done, which I quickly discovered when I joined. I joined about the week they raised the money. And I said, okay, this is enough to make half the game. And we'll start, made the 2D version, and immediately we start to raise money again, which is like, at that point in time, getting blood out of a stone. Being an internet game developer is like being a banker in Iceland today. No one really wanted to talk to you. Somehow we're able to noodle together sort of roughly $1 million, and we sort of get through the year 2002. Then we run out of money. We hold a large staff meeting and we say, okay, we don't have any money anymore, but we're still going to go on developing the game. And so we operate the company without paying any salary for about a period of 3 months. Some people hadn't accepted salary for half a year. And somehow we're able to sell the publishing rights to a US company called Simon & Schuster, who had an interactive games sort of division at that point in time. That is enough to fund the game to release in May 2003. Somehow we were able to do that. Then Simon & Schuster decides to close down its game development arm. So we end up in the state where the game is released. We have a publishing agreement with Simon & Schuster. There are some boxes in the field. There are 30,000 people which have bought the game and are playing it. But there's no active distribution and there's no marketing. And we cannot do anything because we've basically made the contract with Simon & Schuster. Through a half a year of figuring out the org chart of Simon & Schuster and people that want to talk to us, because everyone we had relationship with had left, we're able to get the rights back. And really, in the beginning of 2004, that's really when we sort of figure out how to make this business work, is to have it all sort of vertically integrated, where we have done publishing, marketing, operations, customer support, and all of those things in-house. Then after that, we sort of go through the rest of the timelines, pass 100,000 in 2006, open up in China. We merged with a US company called White Wolf, who are the holders of World of Darkness, which you might have heard about. We do a graphics update, 200,000 subscribers. We have the Icelandic economy collapsing on us, which is very interesting. If you ever want to sort of mentally put you in the place of operating an international company in a country that has no banking system, that was an interesting thing. We announced Dust 514 in GDC Europe 2009. We hired 200 people last year, where we grew from 400 to 600, and we basically did nothing else that year. It's a lesson to all of you. If you ever think you're going to do that, you can basically delay everything else while you go through that. I launched Dust 514 as an exclusive at E3. And then, now, last week, then we have launched our Avatar extension to EVE and our sort of formal foray into virtual goods in EVE. We also have our studio now here in Newcastle. So I want to give a little shout out to Richard and his buddies here. If you will all applaud them a little bit for me. Woo! Richard is there in the back. These guys have been tremendously helpful in delivering Dust to the PS3. There's a lot of pepped up knowledge about console development over here, which has plugged quite complementary into what we have already had. So if I sort of summarize the whole approach that we have taken at CCP, is that we have sort of basically created the framework of a world and we rely on something which we call emergence, which is that you give people the tools to play the game, but you don't really give them any direction or story to play through. And then you iterate very rapidly in very close collaboration with the user base, and then ultimately what you end up with is this massive pyramid of social equity, which is all the, for lack of a better word, drama that gets sort of bottled up in this single shared experience. And I've counted it up. If I count all the minutes that all the players have logged into EVE Online in the last 8 years, it's about 500,000 man-years which have gone into EVE Online, which is enough to build 2 pyramids like they have in Egypt. It's about 200,000 man-years per pyramid. And you could all think, okay, what a wasted effort. Why wasn't this done to achieve something productive in life? But when you think about it, then all of this sort of bottled up energy has gone into this one single shard, and all of the sort of value proposition of the game is basically this effort. We have sort of started to talk about this more and more, sort of describing it to each other and to others. And what has definitely caught on is the whole sandbox playground approach versus the theme park approach. Of course, the theme park is, the best implementation of the theme park is World of Warcraft, obviously, which is a fantastic ride of a very well-engineered experience where you go through a design process and everybody gets a lollipop and meets Mickey Mouse, and everyone is happy. But the downsides of the theme park is that you don't really go to a theme park to get to know new people. It's kind of creepy. If you sort of go there with people you already know and you have a great experience. Then in the sandbox, we have utter chaos. We basically have sand and some buckets, shovels. We have some people over here, the kids over here that decide to build a sandcastle, and then we have people over here, basically this guy, that tries to ruin your sandcastle building for you, and the nanny is not only watching. And if this guy wasn't bad enough, then we have this guy, who is really bad. Case in point, the localization. If only it was this easy. Out of all of this comes the concept which we call emergence. When you have all of this chaos, which is mildly structured, you get patterns that emerge out of the chaos, like you see a school of fish forming a pattern, and that really has become the EVE experience. And of course, this is all in a very sort of social network way, and what we have always emphasized is to keep everyone on the same shard, because what we have seen in EVE, you have a much larger and more stable patterns of social interaction than you have in other games which shard the experience into individual shards or segments, and thus you don't really have critical mass forming the truly interesting things. And to make a point, I'm going to run through a story I often do to sort of explain the concept of emergence. So what you see here is basically the galaxy map for EVE. Every dot here is a solar system. And the way that the game is constructed is that here in the center, we have secure solar systems where there's basically NPC police that make sure that no one is attacking another player. The NPC police comes and shoots down anyone that aggresses on another player unless they have a war declaration on them, which is detailed. And then out on the outer regions, we have what is called 0.0 space, which was our hope in the beginning, that people would settle those regions and then build their own empires. And that would basically be the game. But that was just a theory in the beginning. So we were quite excited to watch it when the game comes out. And what we saw happening is because these regions were full of computer-controlled pirates, then people had to organize themselves to be able to take over those regions. And we saw that people tend to form groups based on where they come in the world, because that's obviously pre-existing social networks. So in the beginning of the game, like the first month, then we have a pretty interesting sort of social pattern forming, is that in this region of space, we had Russian players, and we had Scandinavian players over here, with a lot of people from Benelux and France and Germany over here, and up here we had a lot of American players. And it was interesting to watch the Russians. The game is quite popular in Russia. There's something about darkness of space and world domination that caters to Russians. And they're really good at playing the game. They're very proficient. But in the beginning, we didn't have any Unicode support. So they had to basically localize the game themselves, which they did through hacking, which they're also kind of good at. And they distributed a plugin for the game so you could speak in Cyrillic, but then you could speak no other language, even though you understood or could communicate in English. You just saw boxes and triangle and things like that. And when you're in that state, then it appears that the only language you can make it understood in is violence, which the Russian communicated a lot in with the Scandinavians here next door, and which is quite serendipitous that they are sort of neighbors in real life and over there. And the Russians were quite frustrated that they couldn't conquer the Scandinavians and take the region from them. And it didn't really make any sense because they had the numbers, they were better at playing the game, and didn't compute. Until they figured out that it really was the Americans which were funding the Scandinavians. So there were huge supply lines of ships that went from this region, like ammunition and sort of tools of war. And the Americans were always saying, like, no, we just manufacture things. We don't wage in this war business. No, we're a peaceful alliance, when secretly funding the Scandinavians against the Russians. And it wasn't really until the Russians convinced the French to go and attack the Americans, breaking the supply line, that the Russians were able to push the Scandinavians out. And this is something that plays out in the first 6 months as the game is released. We don't really know that this is going on. We're just locked in a basement trying to fix all the bugs we released the game with. And we sort of discover it after the fact through YouTube videos and propaganda and forum posts, where all of this political intrigue, where there are like 15,000 people sort of involved in the war, there are 15,000 people in the center just watching the news and figuring out what's going on. There's espionage and double espionage and all sorts of things going on. And this is all something that just happens because we've basically given players the tools to do this. This has now gone to the nth degree. You can just imagine if this was happening with 30,000 people, what's now happening with close to 400,000 people. And that sort of relates into the energy that's being unleashed in Eve right now. It's that the stories and the game has really been built by the players to the point where they perceive the game to be reality and to be something that they have built. And I know it sounds kind of freaky to confuse a game with reality, but that is basically what it has amounted to. We publish magazines, we hold internet sports competitions, there is media, there are fan sites, there are news networks, all which solely focus on EVE Online and nothing else. And coming from a country of 300,000 that has television, media, and all those things, it makes perfect sense to me. But it's often surprised to people how much really goes on in this virtual society. But supporting all of this emergence is not a trivial thing. First, we have released an endless amount of expansions where we try to tweak the rules of the game, address some of the things which are inhibiting emergence, because often you need to implement a basic support structure so that something emerges. We have seen the absence of that in the Icelandic economy, where they had no financial regulators and the banks run amok, and that isn't sustainable and it collapses. So we always have to follow what's going on in the game with a level of certainty and structure so that you can build it up to the next step. A lot of that involves social institutions. EVE is basically a free market where initially we controlled the market a lot. Then we sort of take back and we give the market completely over to the players. In 2003, we ran an experiment called the Council of Stellar Management, where we picked representatives from the community to advise us on what needed to happen in the game. And then in, 2008, we do the Council of Stellar Management 2, which is basically a democratically elected representative group of 9 people, which are elected by EVE players, and we fly them twice a year to Iceland. And then sometimes in between, we're actually doing it this week to address some of the issues which are occurring right now in EVE. We have an economist that's been analyzing the economy and publishing economic reports since 2006. And here's a picture of him dressed up in his economy suit. This was quite difficult to explain when we started it, but now it sort of makes sense to people because we have seen so many virtual currency systems being born that having an economist to analyze it makes all the sense in the world. It wasn't so obvious back then. The Council of Stellar Management is this group of 9. They have helped us a lot in really listening to what needs to be addressed as a meta pattern in the game. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to see the noise, just see a signal out of the noise of like millions of forum posts full of anger and vile, and you have to sort of try to get a signal on what you really have to address. This group has been really helpful in helping us understand where to take the game next. We've also thought of EVE more and more as a product ecosystem, where we have the single shard heart of EVE Online, which is basically the economy and all that social intrigue. And we're now adding additional products. We have novels, we have iPhone applications, we have a lot of plug-in products that plug into that social equity so that you can basically interface with EVE wherever you are. The expansion that we're doing now with regards to putting sort of a face to EVE is also a way to put more of a texture to this social equity. And here we see the character creator we released at the beginning of the year, where we did a very detailed system to allow people to create a unique identity, where you can customize your face, your hairstyle, your makeup. We had a team of makeup artists explain to us how to make sure the eyeliner matches the lipstick and all those things. If we were to have the nerds like me decide this, then it would have gone nowhere. This apparently was a big feature. And it's a little bit washed out on the screen, but it is quite a detailed tool to really allow people to create their own virtual identity. All of this is done on a core technology platform we've been building now over the past 8 years, which we call Carbon, which is basically the server and client architecture that's behind EVE Online. We're using a lot of that in Dust, even though we also use the Epic engine, Unreal, to take Dust over to consoles, because we didn't want to port Carbon over to the current generation of consoles. And we're using that also for World of Darkness, which also allows us to take investment steps in technology that wouldn't necessarily make sense for EVE, because we can capitalize them across the different portfolio of games. So here's something that we showed at GDC last year. Here we see a real-time cloth simulation, which doesn't necessarily make sense in a spaceship game, but it makes sense for all the games. I'm not going to name any names, but you see here the twirling of the dress happens in real time. It's calculated by the computer. No animator has to do that. You basically have to define the physical properties of the dress and the hair, and then everything is achieved through secondary animation, which allows you a lot of scalability and realism. If you could dim the lights just a bit. And you see the quality better. All the sort of twirling of the cloth and all that is done in real time on consumer hardware. And here we see sort of the clothes interacting with the environment, which is often something which is lacking in modern computer games. But making this investment for another game allows us to feed that directly into EVE, test the technology over there, and then release next games with that technology stack sort of tested. So Dust. The idea of a Dust is basically what happens on the planets while the people are controlling space. They run around and conquer planets. And there, we're really expanding the universe onto a whole separate platform where we have 2 different clients. You have the PC client where you play EVE Online, and then you have a console client, which is basically Dust, a first-person shooter. You cannot play both with the same character. The pod pilots in EVE are specially made to fly spaceships, whereas the Marines on the ground are also specially made to do that. It's a little bit the Air Force and the Marines. But the games are still connected through something which is called EveGate, so that they still build the sort of same unified community. EveGate is almost like a Facebook of sorts for the EVE universe, often called Spacebook. And that really sort of built the connection between the game. Also, there are alliances and corporations that span EVE and Dust, and we're already now seeing recruiting where EVE corporations are going into FPS communities to recruit Marines for the impending doom when Dust comes out, and you have to make contracts with them to fight over the planets of EVE. The games are linked to the point where there's an elevator that goes between, and we're hoping as soon as sort of 2013 and 14, then you can have a Dust Marine take a space elevator up to Incarna and meet someone over there. But that's future music currently. I'm going to show you an in-game trailer from Dust, which is a continuation of the trailer you saw before, the Future Vision, and this is basically the Dust soldiers fighting back. And if we could dim the lights again.
All fire teams, this is command. Hostiles have taken the Skyfire battery. We have a team pinned down inside the control room. They will not hold without reinforcements. You're going to insert from the west and buy them some time. FleetCom has informed there are Reds approaching low orbit, so move fast. Clear, go. Let's get snipers. Gunfire, take out those sentries. Copy that. Gunfire 3-5 tallies your mark. RDV, hot drop. Skyfire is primed, cap at 100%. FleetCom, enemy dread in low orbit. Copy, Dave arrays are tracking. Gunfighter 3-5, we are going down. Discharge in 3, 2, 1.
They told us we had no chance. That we were fools to even try. But I'm a mercenary. I don't judge your ambitions. I only judge what you can afford. Pay my price, and I'll strike down the heavens. I've fought your war 1,000 times and won them all. And I know this is the moment that will change everything. On this day, the blood I spill will bring down an empire, and the world will burn before your very eyes. They will remember us, and they'll remember what happened here. On this battlefield, one shot can change the course of history. And you're going to be the one that takes it.
Okay, so now that we have this massive universe full of social equity that we've been building up for the past 8 years, we're having Dust connect into it, we have built that massive ecosystem of products that connect together into one sort of cohesive universe. What are sort of the next steps from that? That is something we've been thinking a lot about. I've gotten a lot of inspiration from this book called The Experience Economy, written by Joseph Pine in '98. Quite a revolutionary concept, I would say. And it goes into sort of explaining the economic progression of value as it has gone through different sort of aspects of life, where things go from basically commodities to goods to services to experiences. And there's a customization step in between. The example which is often used is Starbucks, or basically the progression of coffee, where you have sort of stages of evolution from having sort of basically fungible goods, where no one really minds where the coffee beans come from, you just need coffee beans, to adding a brand and a process to it, and then you have ground coffee, and then you can buy ground coffee and you can take it home and you can have a coffee sort of experience with your friends, to running a coffee house where you have sort of taken the experience and you've turned it into a service, to doing something which is so individualized that you can have a frappo mochaccino with whatever, and it's very personal, and it's actually no longer about the coffee, it's about the experience of going to Starbucks. And it's interesting to see as the progression goes through the curve that you're selling less and less coffee throughout each step. If you take a look at a Starbucks restaurant, the part that sells coffee is actually tiny. It's kind of weird when you think about it. Why don't they just size up and sell more coffee? Because it isn't really about selling the coffee. It's about going to Starbucks and being at Starbucks, going and buying ridiculously expensive coffee and then sitting at a table with your MacBook and pretending to write a blog while really you're sort of checking out the girl over there. And that's sort of how coffee has been turned into the ultimate good, into the ultimate experience. And I've often sort of toyed with mapping the game industry onto this progression, where we have sort of casual games, which are on the coffee bean stage. You play a casual game and you don't really care almost what the game is. Maybe you want to play Tetris, but you don't really care where it comes from. You just want to play Tetris. To what I call the AAA experience, which is the grounded coffee. You go to the store, you buy a box, you take the box home, and you have the fun at home with basically the coffee you bought. But the proprietor of the game isn't really part of that experience. Like the developer and the publisher are fairly absent when you're playing a single-player game. Then we have the next step, which I would say MMOs are at, where you offer the game as a service. People pay a fat fee to experience your game. But really the next stage is to basically have the game so tailored that you can sort of decide your own level of engagement with the game, both in terms of time and in terms of investment in the game, and really unlock that. And if we look at some of the free-to-play games, they've obviously progressed to that stage where people can have a very tailored experience through the consumption of virtual goods. We've been sort of entering this market now, and we did a lot of research into this prior to doing that. And it became obvious to us that the price of things almost becomes content in and of itself. So I'm sure you have seen in the press that we have this item which does nothing in Eve. It's basically an implant you put on your avatar. It's called the monocle, even though it's an ocular implant. And it's sold for $68. And everything went a little bit crazy on the internet. How can we think anyone would buy an ocular implant for $68 in a game that basically does nothing? And what we see, a lot of people decided to buy that implant because it's almost a statement of your sort of investment in the game is to be a person that does that. Obviously, we're just doing early steps with these things. There's going to be a full spectrum to the different type of prices, and we also have cheaper goods and all that. But it's been interesting to see really how this has been unlocking. For this, we have created almost a triple currency system where you earn currency inside the game called ISK. You can buy what is called a Plex, which is basically the equivalent of a 1-month subscription. And then we have another currency system called Eur, and that applies to the virtual goods and sort of that part of the economy, whereas the ISK part applies to the sort of merit part of the economy. And then you have Plex as an intermediary to these two things. Due to events which mostly have to do with documents from within CCP, which were sort of design documents and debate within the company in a very polarized way were released. Then there's been a lot of energy unleashed in Eve. This is a picture of a protest that was going on over the weekend, where we had thousands of people protesting the notion that CCP was going to sell win in Eve Online, which is definitely not the intention, even though people have extrapolated that as the impending doom based on misrepresenting the game design documents which were released. And that sort of ties into people feel that the game is so real that this sort of breakage of reality that all of a sudden somebody can just buy items and they get created it has really sort of distorted the reality. And I'm actually going to show you something which is something that no one has seen before. This is basically an attempt of ours to sort of try to communicate really the passion of the EVE player in a visual medium. This is something that we'll probably be launching next week, but you guys are the first to see it. So I'd love to hear back from you later on whether you feel the emotion. So we could dim the lights.
We built something great. We weren't going to let them destroy it. Not without a fight. I remember we set a trap.
Battleships on the outposts. Tacklers get points on anything that moves.
All we had to do was hold them up and let the big guns do the killing. We had no idea what was coming.
Fleet hostiles inbound. All ships break off and align to Planet 5.
It was an ambush.
Interdictors on grid.
They hit us from long range.
It's a 200.
It's like going into a gunfight with a knife.
We're getting hammered. Clear comms. Battleships try to burn out of range.
It's a helpless feeling, watching your friends get shot up. But the fleet commander, he kept it together.
Scepters, if you can get close to them, we can still win this. Go.
They were counting on me to fly through 200 clicks of space directly into a wall of gunfire. My hands were shaking. I didn't think I was gonna make it, but there I was, flying through the whole pack of them.
Go. This is in fleet comms. Warp to 0. All ships, go now. Fleet, order targets by range. Let's go to work.
From up close, our weapons tore them to shreds. They had it coming, and we weren't gonna let up.
All ships, you are weapons free. Kill them all.
We held our ground. We still are, to this day.
Scepters, that was one hell of a run. Great job.
I don't know how to explain this, but I'm telling you, it was so real. I was there. I'm telling you, I was there.
But like I was saying, then emotions are running very high right now in EVE. There's been protests over the weekend, and we've been communicating with the EVE subscriber base sort of on an ongoing basis since then. We're now flying the Council of Stellar Management over to Iceland, and we're meeting them on Friday. And what's really going to be the outcome of that is, I don't really know. This is sort of, we're creating the world as we go along, which has always really been our way. We've taken these steps and then we have refined. We've always sort of looked at success in this space more like a journey than a destination in and of itself. So I can just tell you to watch closely what's going to be the outcome of the meetings happening in Iceland with a democratically elected council. This is history in the making. And this is really what has taken us from this to like operating EVE forever. That's it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Hilmar. That was extraordinary and uplifting and informative and inspirational, and well done, you guys. Do you feel some sort of big responsibility on your shoulders for looking after these sort of virtual galactic empires and the populations in them?
Yes, we absolutely do. I mean, to sort of try to sort of leap and iterate at the same time. I mean, now we're doing a move in EVE, which we think is very much needed to make EVE relevant in the time as we see the whole business models of games evolving. And that's a controversial thing to do. So I'm now currently experiencing the feeling of being hated by 400,000 people My Twitter is full of death threats and all sort of interesting things. And over the course of time, we've gotten bullets in the mail. We've had embassy officials come and try to intervene with customer support actions. There's been a lot of things. We've had people coming with baseball bats, flown to Reykjavik, not even cooled off, and then showed at the office with a baseball bat. I'm here to talk about the factory system. So we've seen an awful lot of energy and emotion here.
So is anybody out there tweeting about this? I mean, you've revealed some things that people don't know in your universe. Is there much activity from what Hilmar's been saying today on? We could do with a Twitter fall going on here to see what's going on. Yeah. Okay, over to the audience. I'm sure you've got lots of interesting questions to ask this speaker. Don't be shy. Oh, it's always at the back. Okay, this is my longest shot yet. Okay, Todd.
But it's
You're
not
quite
going to work,
good.
you know that. Is it working? Hey! So why go through a campaign to explain to the world that it's real when quite obviously they already think it is?
It's really to explain it to people which are currently not playing it. The idea with the campaign is to try to relay the emotion outwards. You don't have to explain it to the people that currently play it, but this is thought of as an external campaign to try to sort of articulate that.
Can I have my ball back, please? Anybody else? Oh, God. This is an easy one.
Hello? Yeah. What is it about EVE that makes it so enduring? I mean, MMOs come and go. Some are around for a few weeks, some are around for a few years, but EVE's been there for over 10 years. What is it? What's the secret sauce that keeps it going?
Yeah, I would say the secret sauce is the sandbox, and really that the content of the game is the people that play the game. So we do not have to create all the minutes of enjoyment that you have with the game. You have the stories like the Russians and the Scandinavians, which happen, which basically are sort of, it's a perpetual machine of metagaming that just goes on. And that really makes it, what the players do with the game is way more interesting that we ever think of doing with it. And that really has been what has kept it going. Also, I mean, we have been doing our damn best to really figure out what people want as the next step, each step of the way. Sometimes we've done very good refinements of gameplay, but then we have also done things which are new things to the game, like Dustin and Karnar. So the mixture of these two things, I think, is the secret. And it isn't really a big secret, and I make it maybe sound simple, but it's baseball bats and bullets in the mail and all of that on top of it.
Is anybody winning?
Is anybody winning? We thought initially that somebody would win. Somebody would make an alliance or a corporation so large that they would basically conquer the game, and then the game would enter a steady state where nothing is happening. But what we've always seen is that there's someone inside a large corporation like that stabs the other people in the back, runs away with the corporation assets, and it crumbles from within. So it's really the most valuable commodity in EVE is trust between the people that play the game inside a group, and somehow when the group gets to a certain point, then the inferred trust between the people involved, it breaks down at some point, and a corp theft occurs, as it's called in EVE.
Okay, question here.
Yeah, thanks for the ball. Quick one, and then a second, if it's all right. How much time gets played a day? Do you have like how many minutes a day per person or in total?
It's a little bit difficult to track because there are elements of the game which you can play in a very idle way. So people are often logged into it for a long time. Similar to Facebook, people often have Facebook open even if they're not very engaged with it. So, and we're actually not really good at measuring the average minutes. Sometimes when I see the social games guys who have it down, the engagement down to minutes and seconds and all that, I become envious of all their metrics. So, I mean, frankly, we don't really have a good grip of what the average of actual engaged play is. If you look at the average of how people are connected to the game, the number is crazy high. It's 27 hours per week.
Yeah.
But that's because there's a lot of people that just run the client all the time.
So let me preface the next part by saying I think it's fucking awesome what you're doing, and it's really impressive, and it's got value. It's really an astonishing piece of work. 200 million minutes of Angry Birds are played a day. That's a billion 200 million hours of Angry Birds a year. Clay Shirky says that's about a Wikipedia's worth of human value a month.
Yep.
What are you doing to create value in the planet, other than kind of giving people a pastime that they can go have fun with? Where's the intrinsic value to humanity in the midst of an Icelandic economic meltdown, the rest of it? And I don't mean to damn it, because I'm genuinely interested.
Yeah, and it's a really good question. And I would almost throw the question back and ask, what is reality doing to make reality relevant? I mean, when you think about it, people live on a hamster wheel of Western consumption, which involves buying a large house on a mortgage, which means that you have to work a lot to pay on the mortgage, which means that you're not at home with your family, you're at work to keep up with the Jones, and then you need a new car, and a lot of things which you are constantly aggroed with advertising and all that. You've been built up to have this expectation that you need to buy all these things. We have concepts like retail therapy, where the act of buying things is equated to going to church. Retail therapy, the psychological theory behind it is about that. And when you think about the unsustainability of Western lifestyles, where if everyone were to live like an American, we would need 5 Earths. I actually only think we need 3 if it were used the UK as a standard. Which I don't, these are just facts, I make no judgment. So, so if we think about that, then, I mean, what have we really created in terms of real life?
So it's escapism.
Well, it's not escapism. I would say it's a better constructed vehicle to have people have social, enjoyable experiences. And if you were to ask EVE players that come to FanFest why they play EVE, they play it because it's a better version of reality.
So what's your ambition for the console version?
Well, I mean, our vision for the console version is to bring a lot of the attributes we've built in EVE over to the console space, which lacks it sorely. When we defined what Dust is about, then we heard a lot from the console community. Yeah, finally, the endless deja vu of the same game playing over and over again has some meaning. There's some persistence, there's some consequence. It isn't just the endless deja vu of the cops killing the terrorists. And that's really, we want to bring meaning and relevance to the console space, like we sort of on some dimension did for the PC space when that became connected.
Who's next?
Cheers. So lots of people talking, certainly earlier in the day, about free-to-play and freemium and things like that. At the moment, unless something's changed, you're not free-to-play. And I just wondered if you thought about it and, in fact, probably potentially buck against that trend and say, well, not everything has to be, and certainly with your world, I imagine that it's probably better not. But just what your thoughts are about that and what you're thinking about it.
Yeah, a lot of the free-to-play experiences we see are volume games where you have a very open funnel, and you have a lot of people churn through, and you sort of devise ways to sort of have them stick in that net, and that's been a lot applied to a sort of casual social space, and that's what we see. But I think what the fundamental thing is, and it goes again to the Western consumption lifestyle we've built, is that people want to invest in their hobby. If you play golf, you want to buy golf clubs. You want to buy silly golf clothes. You want to do it. You're gratified by doing it because it's your hobby and you want to live it. And I think that is really, on some dimension, what casual games and free-to-play games are harnessing into. Once you kind of like playing Mafia Wars, then you like buying things in Mafia Wars because it's what you do. And you do that in golf, scuba diving, knitting, stamp collection, It's all these hobbies which people experience, and they want to invest in it because it's gratifying to do. I am an amateur photographer, and I want to buy a lens. Like, I read the press release, I wait for it, I save up the money, then I buy it, and I have it, and I feel great. And I think this is really the emotion which free-to-play games are harnessing on some level, but in a virtual sense. Because usually what you're buying isn't really a physical object. It is the experience of looking forward, buying it, owning it, showing it to others. Often not necessarily, sometimes just owning it is enough. And that's really the emotion which is being harnessed. So I'm more interested in that aspect of it rather than the free aspect. I think that's fairly insignificant in the grand scheme of things. That's just a way to build a really large funnel and throw the earth on the wall and see who sticks.
Okay, I guess we've got time for one more. At the back. Okay, here's long ball. Are you ready for this one?
No, it's broken. Oh, no, it's not. Yeah, I wanted to first propose a very silly thing of getting Björk as an evil space queen, but then you really took it into such a serious philosophical debate about human consumerism that I don't dare to ask that question again anymore. But I'd like to ask, so basically this sounds like Eve is more than a game. It's actually becoming a philosophy about how to see life. Are you writing a book about this? The Eve Bible?
Well, I mean, we've written books about the backstory of Eve, which sets the stage, but we haven't really written a book about what goes on in the game. And, but, I mean, community websites and blogs and things like that have covered it. I'm not sure whether it will be a good format to write it as a book, because it's a very sort of, it's something that just happens. I don't think it would make a good book, even though experience in the game is like second to nothing that I think you could really have. I've had emotions playing Eve, which I've never had in real life, because I've never really exhibited real danger to that level, where I'm like sweating bullets and peeing myself and screaming at the computer and thinking, why am I doing this? This is a game I made. Why is it making me feel like this? And these are feelings I've never had. So, yeah, that's, but I still don't think it would make a good book.
Hey, Hilmar, just really quickly, by the way, I got the ball. This ball idea is so cool. I just want to throw it around the room. Okay. I know it's a tough time right now with all the adversity you're facing, but a lot of people love you guys, so, you know, keep up a stiff lip. In your video, it looked like you can call a ground strike from dust into Eve. Is that real time?
Yeah, it's real time.
Is that current or is that planned?
It's current.
Friggin' awesome.
Yeah. Are we wrapping?
I think let's have a huge round of applause for Hilmar.
Just to the press in the audience, I would want to ask a favor. I can still ask. I've said a lot of things which can be taken out of context and caused even more inflammatory things in the community. If you would just hold off on having that happen until after Friday, I would really appreciate it.